Good evening, listeners. This is Bless Radio. It's Tuesday evening and it's 6 p.m. UK time. This is the Spiritual Discussion Program. I'm Saad in Southeast London, and with me is Gregory. How are you, Gregory, and where are you today?
Hello, as usual in Brussels.
Okay, and the weather here in Southeast London or London, it's overcast. It has rained during the day, and it's a bit colder than last week now. Temperatures have dropped, but it's still mild. How's it in Brussels?
Just the same thing.
Okay. You always fall. We're always on the same, pretty much the same. So yes. So dear listeners, as I mentioned, this is the Spiritual Discussion Program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdushin. And we have a topic every week for discussion. Tonight's topic is changing our ways for the better. Changing our ways for the better. You can join in the discussion with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. I'm going to begin with what is the Grail Message? The Grail Message in the Light of Truth by Abdushin is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail Message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized, and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover, through the intuitive perception, if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail Message, Abdushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail Message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail Message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. Dear listeners, I just want to remind you the topic for discussion tonight is changing our ways for the better. Changing our ways for the better. You can join in the discussion with any questions or comment by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Gregory, as usual, I looked in the dictionary for the words in our, the main word here in the title, or you can call it title of our discussion tonight. And the topic we're discussing is changing our ways for the better. So the main word there is change. And so I looked up the word change and in the dictionary, and it says make, in brackets, someone or something different, alter or modify. Also, there's another one there. It says replace, in brackets, something or with something or with something else. Replace, which is in brackets, something with something else. Especially something of the same kind that is newer or better. So with that definition, Gregory, in the dictionary, does that give a good picture of the word change?
Well, you mentioned the word change, but if that expression is not attached to something, then basically it has no meaning. So it's best to consider the whole expression, that is the topic, rather than taking the word change alone.
Yes, I fully appreciate what you've said there. So yes, because that's what the topic is, and you can't really look at change by itself. So yes, changing. So the topic, again, I'll repeat the title, or the topic tonight is changing our ways for the better, which I think is quite easy to follow or to understand. So I won't spend more time on that. And so one question, Gregory, we can just start with is, why should we change? And obviously in this case, the topic is changing our ways for the better. Why should we change?
The counter question one should ask will be, why should we not change? After all that we see, or all that we're able to perceive with our faculties, albeit the instrument of sensation, all these sort of the record changes. If something, say like the mountain, is in the same place and hasn't changed, is say in size or whatever is around that mountain, it remains the same, then we know it is there and we ignore it because we know it remains the same. However, because motion is an intrinsic feature of life, which definitely means changes. Motion induces changes, induces internal changes or external changes. Therefore, you will find mankind has no alternative because it, the personality, came into existence through motion, and therefore there must be motion, continuous motion, that is continuous change.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Immediately when you started answering this question, I thought of age, and you know, when we are born, you know, you're a baby, then you turn into an infant and child, and into a teenager, then adult, and so on. So change is constantly happening in our life. It's like, which is inevitable, you know. So just like you were describing about the mountain changes, it is actually inevitable that we have to change, whether we like it or not, just through, again, being, you could say, a part of nature, just by the virtue of being born on the earth, there's a guarantee that you will be changing. And that's just on the age I was talking about. But of course, it's much more than that, because, as I say, you start as a baby and turn into an infant and so on and so on. And it's more than just the word change in there. You could call it a development. I'm thinking that now, you know. And Gregory, when you were talking about the mountain, I also started thinking, many things are coming to my mind. Also, you know, like evolution, you know, you just know that these things happen. So it's like absolutely, you could say, part of life. So maybe I will ask Gregory, what is the point of the changes in the end? This development, or what is this point? Yeah, what is the point of the changes? And maybe you should focus on the human being first. Yes.
So, such a question already strikes anyone who is a bit intuitive. What is the purpose of motion? Only through motion, incessant motion, intrinsic motion, can there be progress? Can there be development? Else, what started as a change and then stops very soon is like water running from one place to the other and then branching off, remains in the same place. In that particular scenario, all sorts of things will coagulate in that branch and becomes putrid. It's no more refreshing. One can also understand that only when the body is exercised can the blood flow freely to ensure that oxygen travels around the body. The same thing with breathing. If there were no changes, can one consider the case where one breathes in continually without breathing out? That is a constant change. Once that stops, then decay sets in. So motion is an intrinsic feature in creation. an intrinsic feature which allows for further development.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Again, so many things are, let's say, coming into my mind about this, topic about changing. Well, the topic says changing our ways for the better, but at the moment we're just talking about change or changing. So we talked about development, and also evolution came into my mind, and so I'm thinking, Gregory, is there like, let's say first came on the earth, let's say the landscape and so on, the sea, and was there, and then next, let's say at one point came the animals, and then the human beings. So my next question, Gregory, is there something else coming after the human beings? Is there a limited time span for the humanity on this earth? And it's like a bit of speculation, I could say. I'm asking this question, but you start wondering, because you're saying there is going to be a change, that is like a guarantee. So is there something off? Let's say the one time the humanity will die on this earth and we'll have another species?
To have a comprehensive view on the scenario you just painted, one must first understand or grasp aright the rules or the laws of nature through which all that one perceives with their senses came into existence. The gradual way in which first there was the energy, which energy then precipitated, that means it cooled down. And in that process of precipitation, you now have what we now describe as the elements. And in the union and alliances of these elements, we now have what they call compounds. It didn't stop there. The upbuilding continued, in which these compounds form giant molecules. And from the giant molecules, initially, they were the plants. It didn't stop there. Subsequently, progress ensued until, in that case where we had the plants, these plants were stationed in spots. But progress continued, in which animals gradually, from very simple cells, came into existence. And gradually, things were built up until what we now have is the human form as we know it. But it has been a step-by-step union of these elements, a step-by-step alliances of these elements in accordance with the laws of creation that permitted that unfolding which is now called evolution. Evolution basically only means the unfolding in time, the union and alliances of the elements as time goes on. And that is why when these giant molecules, one is referring to the physical body, when they disintegrate to the basic elements. They do not disintegrate to elements which are unknown. So one can already see the picture. However, it must be stressed that the union and the alliances which these simple elements formed to compounds and giant molecules and cells did not happen in an arbitrary form. As many may know, before any upbuilding, there must be a plan. Before you erect a building, a physical building, there must be a plan. It cannot be that you just put the materials together in an arbitrary manner. So, in nature, there is a plan in accordance with the rules which nature has set down. That plan, one may call it the intrinsic reference plan. This intrinsic reference plan, one may also refer to as the laws through which in motion things need to develop to. But there are two different plans that one may recognize. The external plan, which is the covering, what one sees physically, what one perceives with the physical abilities. That means those senses, so-called five senses. There is the other one. That which is the other one is the spiritual that directs how this plan should go. Therefore, what is referred to now as evolution is only the unfolding of a plan, of an architecture, which has been put there spiritually, in accordance with the laws of creation or with the laws of nature. One will stop there for now.
Thank you so much for your answer there, Gregory, and you could say picture, because you already answered that, what I was going to ask you next, which is because when you think of evolution, then, you're wondering, it's through nature, and you're wondering, is it exactly as you said, is it in being run by somebody? Is there a plan? Like you said, is there a plan, basically? And you've answered that there is a plan, and you've given, a spiritual plan, and I've forgotten the exact phrase you used, but let's call it, I've forgotten actually, I think it was, let's call it earthly plan. I'm not quite sure what the right appropriate word would be, but you did say that. So, Yes, so that really does help to follow this process of, you could say, change in terms of development of this world that we live in. Otherwise, you could say, oh, did it happen by chance? You know, and then this developed and that will, and this one did not develop. So there is a plan. Now, Gregory, I'd like to look at the human being now, because you can see with nature, Gregory, that, let's say, things happen in a harmonious way, or how can I say, in a fruitful way. That's maybe the best way to put it. Because, you know, there have been, let's say, species which have died out, as we know, you know, animals, plants, everything that, you know, as time has gone on, certain species have come and then they have died, become extinct, and then new ones have taken their place. And then the human being has come as you know, after this, or as part of this. So but one thing, Gregory, which we see very different with human beings can intervene in the development on the earth quite considerably, you know, with the environment, as we know very well what is happening, and we haven't been around so long in terms of time, but we've made a lot of impact. Let's say many times it's been a good impact, and then many times also it has been damaging or harmful. But there's something, Gregory, I want to ask on that. It's like when nature was, let's say, before man came on the scene, let me put it that way, it seemed things were progressing well. You know, yes, there's destruction, you know, earthquakes and all that in a part of nature happens, but in the end, there's always a progress, you can call it. With the human beings, Gregory, it seems, yes, there is a progress, but especially when we look at in the time of today, it looks like we are causing, especially in the environmental terms, a lot of damage, which can be, well, a disaster for the future of humanity. I'll put it this way. So how come, Gregory, with nature things progress so, let's say, fruitfully, but with man or humanity, there seems to be, let's say, potential, well, quite a potential for destruction, which could end its own, end its own future.
In the first case, one must carefully reflect on your statements. Of course, man has had a lot of influence on the environment for a long time. Influence on the physical environment is only dependent on influence on the non-physical environment. That means one first thinks about something, and in those thoughts then influence his non-physical environment, and before long it will start influencing indirectly the physical environment. A very simple example. Dams have been built over hundreds of years. And when these dams are built, water is restrained so it doesn't just flow anyhow. In that particular time or that scenario, you now have vegetation in places where initially there was no vegetation, particularly particularly in the arid, so-called arid lands. So those were impacts that man had on the environment. So that is one. And then came the time when fossil fuels were discovered, and man started making use of this fossil fuel. And you now have the global environment where they were pumping so much of harmful substances in the physical environment, which then altered the initial balance. From what can be seen, whenever one comes into an environment, it is important that one reflects and studies the environment before you start making changes to it. What is very clear is that when nature runs its course, things are harmonious. But the question is, what is nature? Are there others behind nature that we cannot yet see or perceive? Or is the word nature used in such an arbitrary way that collectively it means nothing? That means we do not have a definite picture of what nature is. For that seemed to be the case. For if one considers carefully that the formation of the earth did not come about in an arbitrary manner, nor the formation of the solar system or the formation of the universe, the physical material universe which we perceive with our senses. Once one starts reflecting very carefully on that, and one can see that there seems to be a design, an architecture, which architecture must be based on simple rules through which we ourselves came into existence. Then, in all naturalness, the right questions will be, who are those behind this natural phenomena? And how can we get in touch with those who made these designs? One should not consider that the moon is there and just came on its own and could live on its own. Or the sun is there, came on its own and could live on its own. The same thing with human personalities in flesh and blood, just came on their own or could live on their own. So these were the initial questions which were not reflected upon, which were not asked. For as soon as man started asking and observing in silence, many things will become revealed, which things seem to have been hidden. Not hidden because they themselves did not observe clearly enough to see the impact of the operations of activities in nature. Because in their limited perception, which limitation came through the earthly intellect, everything is done in a tactical way. There is no strategic, long-term goal was not looked at. Only the short-term goals. Let me have it now. Tomorrow is of no importance. And that had been the problem. For the rules of nature, the way nature unites these elements, the way nature forms alliances with these elements is beneficial to progress in nature. Whereas that which the human personality has brought into being through their intellect has always been tactical. There is no quiet reflection on long-term goals. With nature, you have things coming into existence. After some time, there is a decay. But with man, look at the plastics they have brought in, which sometimes does not decay. With man, look at the way they have used the fossil fuels, which has done many things, has raised the temperature on the earth. So they have always been acting on short-termism instead of quiet reflection on long-term. On the one hand, if nature is observed and questions asked, how this came into existence, then through many an intuition, answers will be provided and examples will be followed, and then harmony in all naturalness will come into existence. But for now, that has not been the case.
Thank you for this answer, Gregory, and building a picture again. And I can see, we need to really study nature. So we'll continue that discussion in a moment. I just want to tell the listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrusheen. And if you are interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, G-R-A-I-L, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is changing our ways for the better. Changing our ways for the better. You can join in the discussion with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we are broadcasting on blessradio1.com. That's the number one. blessradio1, the number one.com. Also, we are broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number one, space live stream. That's for the live broadcast, which is now, of course. And if you want to, we do have a recording of the show after the show the next day, in fact. again, you go to YouTube, type in the search box, Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space Grail Message, and then the topic of the show, which tonight is changing our ways for the better. Changing our ways for the better. And of course, you can listen to our previous shows also there. Gregory, what I understood from what your last response was about, let's say, looking at nature, studying nature, you can say, and, designing, let's say, our, what we do, what activities we, in terms of inventing something for us, in a way, we need to follow the process the nature follows. And of course, we know these, you've given the examples of the the fossil fuels and plastics, which we have invented, or let's say, well, fossil fuels we discovered, but we have manipulated, and plastics which we have developed. But of course, unfortunately, they have quite some detrimental effect on the environment because they don't decompose in a very, let's say, environmentally friendly way or sustainable way. While nature, we know that everything, there's a cycle, and it does, when it decomposes, it doesn't cause such harm. Now, you also mentioned there, Gregory, about what's behind nature. You could say, yeah, what's behind nature? What's, is somebody controlling nature? And maybe, there are definitely always things we are learning. We don't know, many things. So I want to go there, actually. So Gregory, how can we sort of look into nature? I mean, we do science, right? We do research from science, observing nature and, and our environment, and obviously develop things from that. But somehow, Gregory, that's not being very, let's say, sustainable in many ways. So how can we, Gregory, observe nature or learn from nature, which is, somehow works in a harmonious way?
The question you just asked, how can one learn from nature? First, to learn from nature requires that one must have a sharp perceptive capability. That sharp perceptive capability, one must refer to that as an impression, albeit an intuitive impression. In observing nature, the focus has always been the outermost manifestation of these forces of nature. So this outermost manifestation, which one observes, say on earth, what you refer to as hills, what you refer to as the plants, what you refer to as the animals, these are outermost manifestations of the forces in nature. So also the human being in flesh and blood is also a product of this same outermost manifestation. The thing now is, what is that which manifests behind this covering? That is what one first needs to perceive aright and gradually experience or study or learn how it manifests in different scenarios. Then, most likely, errors will be minimized. In actual fact, there are others other than ourselves who carry out these forces in nature. One may call them nature beings. These nature beings ensure that the laws of creation are adhered to. The plan in nature is adhered to. They are the ones who are responsible for the maintenance or sometimes for the development of that which is to come into existence, the maintenance and the final dissolution. And thus they are responsible from the smallest atom, from the smallest particle to the greatest, as you have on the earth, or the sun, or the universe, or different planets. They are the ones who carry out their activities in accordance with the will of the one who is the creator. Therefore, if one observes their activity and follows it very carefully, the likelihood of errors or of excesses are minimized. At the beginning of time, aeons of time ago, as you will find, there are nature beings who work with the different elements in nature. There are nature beings who are involved with the formation of stones, nature beings who are responsible for water, for the oceans, for the river, nature beings responsible for the fire, nature beings responsible for all that exists in nature. One may also call them substantiate beings. They do not have a free will. They carry out the design presented to them, which they harbor deep within themselves, and they fulfill. However, man has a free will to decide how he or she needs to proceed, how he or she needs to carry out, to change. The problem manifests only, or the problem is precipitated when the works of man clashes with the works of these elemental beings or of these substantiate beings. There has always been problem as long as man does not rely on his intuition to make progress. Had the human personality awakened to the strong impressions of the Spirit, then much earlier it would have perceived the existence of these nature beings. Of course, there are many who are able to perceive, even in so-called olden times, when people talk about Valhalla in the case of the Greeks or the Romans, or the German tribes, or many tribes in Africa. There are many who are able to perceive the existence of these nature beings. It was they who made it possible for the physical universe, for the animistic universe to come into existence through their activities. It is they themselves who also make it possible for man to exist even here on earth, for they are the master builders. The challenge has always been when you ignore the activities of the master builder and you bring in your own designs, which are not up from scratch, which are only short-term designs, then you are unable to see the final effects or the final impact it has on the whole. That is the problem which man has faced and will continue to face. As soon as he himself in his struggles liberates himself from the crass intellectualism and allows his intuition to flourish, then he himself or herself makes progress in accordance with the will of the maker of creation, such that his activities will lead to progress spiritually, for man is of spirit.
Thank you for this picture, Gregory, and explanation. There's many more questions from what you have said. I did receive a question from a listener before you started your response, and I would like to just go to this question now. And the listener's asking, do you think that the people on earth today care about harmony? Most are lost in selfish desires, or the leaders are lost in darkness. So I'll just repeat that question, Gregory, from the listener. It says, do you think people on earth today care about harmony? Most are lost in selfish desires.
That is a pertinent remark. And to respond to it, one merely needs to quote what Christ himself said. By their actions, by their activities, they expose their inner motives. And in that case, having exposed their inner motives, they immediately pass judgment on themselves, which judgment comes about through motion itself. For that which man has given out is what man will have to receive many folds over, so that he himself or herself will need to taste of that he or she has put out through his activities, albeit whether it be intuitive activities or intellectual activities, such that in testing of it, it can then make a decision how to make progress. So that statement is very pertinent. It is correct. For one can already see, even with the so-called recent happenings, the case of the COVID, one could see how many have responded in their own way to this. Some took it seriously, some disregarded it, some had medication, some didn't have medication. Many only think of themselves. But again, there is just one planet which we all inhabit. That is the planet Earth. And common sense should stress one for all and all for one.
Thank you for this answer, Gregory. I want to continue from what you were saying previously, but before I do that, I just want to remind the listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrusheen. And if you are interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, the number 1.com. Also, we are on YouTube.com. Go to the search box there and type in Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space live stream. That's to listen to the live show. And you can listen to the recording of this show. Go to YouTube again the next day. Go to youtube.com again. Type in the search box, Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space, Grail Message, and then the topic of the show, which tonight is changing our ways for the better. Changing our ways for the better. And of course, you can listen to our previous shows as well. And to contact us with any questions or comment, you can contact us on this number, which is our UK number, which is 07939 641-958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 7939 641-958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Gregory, you know, in your not the penultimate answer, one before the last, you were mentioning about nature beings, and you know, and you mentioned about, you could say, in ancient history, when the Greeks, Romans, you know, in Africa you mentioned, and of course it's really all around the world, those civilizations where they, you could say, believed in these so-called gods, with a little g. And there were thousands of them, hundreds and thousands, and they worshipped them as well. And you know, people believed in those things in those times. But now, or not now, over some time, people have lost, with science and other things happening, people have lost trust, maybe even with religion and so on, that these are real. It's like we're thinking, let's say, fantasy even. And so now that connection with those, past or things that were known in the past, let's say, or were believed in the past, is no longer there anymore. And even yes, we could say in those days, civilization, the people, believe those things and stories. But today it's like we are far from that time, and almost like it seems very hard to think that we can somehow, let's say that, and they are nature beings. You mentioned that, they control things that nature has produced, but somehow today, with the technology and so on, people will not seem to, how can I say, they may not even, well, they will probably laugh at it, and most likely they will not really be able to even comprehend it, of those past things. So, and if this is like, let's say, if we assume that that is how the world developed, and people were connected with nature before, and things were, like, say, more in harmony, but in the world of today, it seems almost impossible, with how far the world has moved away from that thinking or belief. I cannot see how we could sort of come back to that. This is what I'm wondering. So my question there, yeah. Have we changed too much, Gregory, away from that? We said changing our ways for the better. Can we really reconnect with those times, or not really times, but with such, which the people of the old used to be connected with? It seems. Can we reconnect?
You said, can we reconnect? That is a question for man. But very simply, many must consider how the earth came into existence and is able to sustain, make sure there's continuous sustenance here on earth. The moon is there, the sun is there, other planets are there. Were these things, did they just appear in an arbitrary manner? Many will deny that it's not arbitrary, because when carbon is mentioned here, whatever element is found on Earth, were they to go to the moon, they will find the same element, or they will find that the so-called element has an inner core and then electrons around it. The hydrogen you find in the sun is equivalent to the hydrogen you find here. It is not different. Then the question is, who were those responsible to ensure these things manifest? The only way one can make progress is first to learn from the designer of a product. Then one may dare to start tweaking or to start making changes. Even in that scenario, one has to ensure that changes made will not bring adverse reactions, which reactions will come to annul the person who is responsible for such changes. then that will be progress. Else you make changes to something which in a reciprocal way comes to wipe you or your generations out. One wouldn't call that one progress. Therefore, the need first to understand what exists is there. When one hears the expression science, one wonders what is referred to when that expression science is used. First, the need is there to understand what science does. Only from that point of view can one now make pronouncements. Many a time, what science does is to collect data, observe externally what they have seen, make minimal changes, and see the responses. Thereafter, they build a model. All of science, they build a model. That is what you have in the so-called physics. That is what you have in the so-called biology. That is what you have in all the areas of science. They build a model. Nowadays, you talk of artificial intelligence. Basically, you collect data and build a model. But a model is not sufficient to represent the laws of nature and can never substitute for the laws of nature, but can only have a quasi-resemblance, not a real resemblance. So what science does is modeling. What is discussed here with the work in the light of truth is not modeling. What is discussed here basically has to do with light, which is a substance, and truth. Truth which has always existed, which in itself does not change. Those two basic intuitions provides the framework for all that exists. That is what man needs to dig himself or herself into. In that process, in opening up with his or her intuition, in the process of striving to grasp the manifestations of nature, of creation, of divine forces, in striving to grasp this manifestation with his or her intuitions, for these are the impressions that strike him or her. It's as if the bandage which man has placed within his eyes or within himself will fall. And many a thing that he has only believed very weakly, without having a thorough understanding for it, many of those things will become reality, will become convictions. Then, what is mentioned now about nature beings will not be any myth anymore, for he or she will know that they exist and they are part of the fabric in nature, for only through their activities was man able to come into existence in flesh and blood. Only then will resonance, will harmony between the way the human personality works and also the way the nature beings who prepared the world of matter for the coming of man. Only then will man understand what nature is all about. Not before then. So it is man who has to change. Change for the better, which only means in humility, opens up through his intuition to perceive the marvels which nature is. Then, like a child, one miracle after another will reveal itself. Then it need not have to study very painstakingly what, in quotes, science has to offer, which science only looks at the externals, but has no knowledge of the internal.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I've received another question from another listener while you were talking. It says, how about the fight in nature? The stronger animal kills and feeds on the weak one. Is it natural, or could, he's missed out a word, I think, could it have been smoothed out by man's harmonious conduct? I'll just repeat that. How about the fight in nature? The stronger animal kills the weak one, kills and feeds on the weak one. Is it natural, or could it have been smoothed out by man's harmonious conduct?
Well, it is good that some of these things are looked at, remarked, and discussed. For many observe what happens in the so-called animal world, and sometimes very sadly, they bring themselves to that same level and want to use that as an excuse in a justified way. One might also ask, why should the animals eat the plants? Is it because the plants are stationary? Is it fair? The laws of the animistic and the laws and the spiritual laws are different. Most of the time, what one sees on the outside, there is a wrong interpretation. And say, is it right that one animal eats the other animal? Consider very carefully. We are not for the aggression of the lion that keeps the other animals on the alert, what would happen? Many will just remain in the same place. But such aggression, which drives many into continuous motion, to be on the move, that keeps all of them on the alert, vigilant. And one should not forget, the so-called lion does not live forever. Before long, it gets old and gets weak. What then happened to the hyenas? They make a feast of it. What then happened to the ants which had been trampled upon? They ensure that they pick that which is dead, they pick it to pieces. In that case, you find that that cycle is maintained. But that which makes use of these bodies must have left, must have experienced that which they need. The core of the animal is animistic. The inner core of man is not animistic, it's of spirit. These are two different species, and therefore will have to be viewed differently. However, one will have to refer many to the walk in the light of truth. There, they can investigate further. But just to add a bit to it, very, very long time ago, it was not that way. It was man in his activities that brought this sort of aggression, as we now see it, into nature, which aggression has then infected or infested others. I still remember in the parts of the world one originated initially, so-called Africa or Nigeria, there is a proverb, but for the venom of the snake, many a person will go out to fetch wood, to fetch firewood, and instead of them to look for ropes made of fiber to use, man will search for the snake to tie this firewood. One can even see it in everyday life, where others will go out deliberately, take that which is not theirs, misuse it, dump it, just as they have done with the lower animals, so they have done with themselves in the so-called slavery, so they have also done with partners, the female beings who came into existence with them. What have they made of them? Machines to produce children. Lack of respect. Man has a lot to answer for.
Thank you for that, Gregory. And the bit you just said at the end, that's exactly where I want to move on to now for the rest of the show. in our discussions. In the news, well, there's been so much, let's say, things going on. Obviously, we know about, you could say, the energy crisis, the petrol situation in UK, shortages. Many things are behind it. We are aware of that, and even, let's say, some horrific crimes have been happening. I mean, we always hear about such crime, but just in the last week or week or two, we've heard some things, and I just wanted to, let's say, go and cover them a little bit in our show now. The latest one I would like to just talk about is the treatment of women. You just mentioned that just now, Gregory. In the UK, there was a murder I think just under 2 weeks ago, if I'm correct, of a young school teacher. She's just going for a short walk to the pub to meet somebody, and somehow, it was a short walk, and she got murdered somehow, and they've now arrested somebody for that. And but then it was highlighting an issue which many women feel very strongly, that they're not treated, like if a man was, let's say, had something similar happen to them, it just would not be treated as it would be treated more seriously than how the women are treated. And so there's somehow a lack of respect there, and people are wondering, where is this coming from? Is this something, let's say, from school days, the children are brought up, the boys, how they look at the girls? We don't need to go into specific examples of these things. I think we can all be aware of it. And, we could, just a simple one, maybe if I give one example, where they wolf whistle or something like that. And just, all the sexual, you could say, abuses that we hear about. And the question I want to ask, Gregory, these, and this is so deeply ingrained in you could say, in the culture or in the society, how women are treated. And the question I want to ask there, this is not taught, basically, Gregory, in the schools, how to treat a woman. I mean, so many things are not taught at school. They're taught academically and maybe in sports, but not, I mean, there are many things which we are not taught, even as we grow up and further in life. But this, you could say, the moral behavior is not taught. So is that something in the school responsibility? Is it the parent responsibility? And how should it be, how can this be dealt with?
In the first case, you mentioned that things are not taught. Through whom did these personalities come to the earth? Did they just drop from the sky? If so, how? If not, did they come from somebody's womb? If yes, then the question will be, should you not, in all naturalness, show respect to that person through whom you yourself came, or show respect to those people who had to carry you from conception to delivery and young age until you yourself were matured enough? Does one require any teaching to do that? Is that not well hammered into the psyche of the child? On the contrary, what has been that deep within the child, there is the respect for motherhood or even womanhood. However, through the wrong examples, which wrong examples are perpetuated through speech, through literature, through wrong culture, the child has now been forced to assimilate this and then look down upon their mothers, women. That is where the problem is. And it is not helpful when even women themselves help to perpetuate this through their attitude, sort of encouraging many to look down on themselves through the examples which they give. Else, any child who is born immediately, deep within, in that child is hammered the respect for motherhood, the respect for womanhood. Which womanhood? Whose task is ennoblement. It is ennoblement when one has taken on conception to bring a personality here into existence here on earth to ennoble himself or herself. It is ennoblement. It is ennoblement in the home. It is ennoblement everywhere. So the challenge is for everyone through first the sort of thoughts they harbor within themselves, looking down on those whom they consider is not as strong as themselves, is not as strong physically, not psychically, for looked at very carefully, women are stronger than men psychically. Well, although it's not possible, how many men are able to carry the challenges of pregnancy? None. Yet they look down on those who faithfully go through that stage. So, must it be taught in schools? Unnecessary. Through the examples which parents, be it the father, stepfather, mother, or stepmother, through the combined behavior, many are able to present an environment, albeit first an environment within their thoughts, the environment of respect. And then before long, these thoughts environment, these psychic environment, these intuitive environment will take on form externally, will now permeate the general environment physically. Only then is woman permitted to adjust herself. Else, the environment in which we live as at now is such that it oppresses. It doesn't grant the opportunity for the smooth or harmonious development of women. Very simple. Go to different parts of the world and hear what many say. They should not go to school. They should not do this. If you do not go to school to improve yourself, how would you then know how to face the challenges? Which challenges have come out from those who have gone to school? How would you then adjust to the challenges within your immediate environment? So what you will find is that it's as if all is wrong. And very sadly, it is encouraged not only by the young ones, but also by the so-called elderly ones, even by governments, in the way they have cared to respond to these challenges that many a woman face.
Thank you for thank you for this answer, Gregory, and just showing the bigger picture that we need to see, when we consider these matters. Dear listeners, I want to let you know we are listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrusheen. And if you are interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is changing our ways for the better. Changing our ways for the better. You can join in the show with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, the number 1.com. Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1.com. Also, we are on YouTube live. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space live stream. You can also listen to the recording of the show the next day. Again, go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space Grail Message. And then the topic of the show, which tonight is changing our ways for the better. You can also listen to our previous shows also on YouTube. Gregory, continuing with what is in the news. I think yesterday, this famous music star R. Kelly in America was convicted for running sex trafficking ring. And many, again, it's a shocking tale of stories of abuse of women and underage girls. And he would coerce them and, intimidate them. And, and he was basically getting away with all of this because He seems to be a powerful figure, and it seems somehow we see this a lot in the world, that they seem to be able to get away, the human justice system, get out of it, because of lack of evidence or reasonable doubt, even though such horrific things have been done, not only to one but many cases. And so I'm wondering, Gregory, is the human justice in such cases, maybe, is it just that we have to wait for the divine justice to take its own course, because the human system is not strong enough to deliver real justice?
There are deficiencies in the so-called justice system. What counts basically is that the facts as to what happened are very well recorded within nature. And of course, the responses, the returns of nature will remedy that which has been placed within nature or within the laws of creation. That itself is a fact. So, if one has to rely on the so-called justice system, which lack all or which do not meet up with that level or sensitivity to provide evidence, then each personality must take heart that justice will be served here or hereafter. The sad thing most of the time is many quickly wish to measure justice based on what is being discussed in the human law courts. There is much more than that. The mills of nature, they may grind slowly, but definitely they do grind exceedingly very fine. So that is it. As a matter of fact, here on earth, you don't have to commit any offense before you are found guilty of not committing an offense. And it is also possible that an offense is committed but is dismissed. That shows you the arbitrary ways in which the human justice system has been designed. So much so that the head personality who is supposed to uphold the justice system is the first one to make sure that it deceives the justice system. So that can already give you a clue as to how what is referred to as justice on earth operates.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer, Gregory. I've got some more things I'd like to talk about, again, all in the news, just last week or so. How about the using harsh language in public, Gregory? We just had a case of it, I think it was yesterday, or the weekend, I think, where the term scum was used, and even somebody was quoting in the past, even there's a term vermin to describe people or someone, and and they said, let's say, even if they said that it was very strong words, but they would, it's like if something very, how can I say, terrible has happened, it's like there is this is a way to express what you want to say, and it's like a justification for it. So I just want a question on that, Gregory. Is it right to use such harsh language in public? This word scum or even vermin to describe somebody. Hello, Gregory?
You have said, is it right to describe? In the first instance, one must know that each one has the free will to use or not to use whatever expressions he or she is capable of putting forward to describe a scenario. Whether that scenario is hurtful to another is a different matter to be discussed. For when it is used in public, is that scenario being painted about a particular person? Nowadays, when something is hot, is to say it is cool. All right? Words have been so twisted now that it's very difficult to understand any meaning that these words used to represent. Therefore, one has to look at this word in perspective, because that which is hot is now referred to as being cool. And all sort of distortions have come in. Of course, they still need to be purified. The key thing here is what lies behind the use of these expressions, scum. Of course, there are behaviors in which you refer to, such as this is the scum of the earth. There's no doubt about that. Sometimes even the expressions scum is not strong enough. But in what context have this been used? These are the things which have to be taken into consideration. So when it is said they are used in public, is it used towards another person? Can you see the overall picture? It's best that these things are ignored and people move their way. Why? Because paying attention to some of these expressions, that particular time that you need to use for self-improvement, you tend to divert your strength and energies, make a recording of such things, and that now is more of a distraction. Whereas had you ignored people who use such expression before too long, you will find that those people will change from their expressions. It's not like it is said, if you keep reacting to every dog that barks at you on your journey, you will never complete that journey, because you'll be looking left, looking right. Any dog barking, you throw a stone or you respond, and you won't move anywhere. So each personality should learn to ignore and most time to go forward. That means self-improvement. Go forward courageously and not keep looking back at every expression that others use. You yourself, however, should learn from it, not to use expressions which is not beneficial to you. In such a case, many an expression which may be used towards you will just bounce off because you will not have an understanding for it.
Thank you for that, Gregory. And another one, which is, let's say, has been there for the last few days, which is we've had the national crisis here in UK with long traffic queues at the petrol stations due to shortage of HGV delivery drivers. Well, not quite, let's say, because of the news, which, supposedly leaked from a private meeting between the oil chiefs and the government, and then broadcast on the media that it panicked the drivers to go and fill up their cars, and as we have seen, lots of queues from that. And you could say now my question on that, Gregory, people are wondering who is to be blamed. Is it the panic drivers who are just, you could say, gone mad, where suddenly, they don't need the petrol, but they're suddenly queuing up, and it's been going on for days now. Is it the person in quotes who leaked this shortage, which was only a small, apparently just a small thing? It's just a warning that might be worse than that. And then the next one, blame is on the media for, broadcasting that, or the government for not planning in advance, when things are not given warning. Plenty, not just this meeting, plenty times in the months before, they were being told this might happen. And we're not looking at the cause of, political causes, Gregory, here, Brexit or other shortages or whatever that has caused it, but really more about, is it any group that should be blamed in this situation? Or, how should we look at it, basically?
Although it is not within the remit of forums like this to say how people should look at how they see things. However, the advice in these matters is that people must be capable of thinking for themselves and move away from the blame game and try to work with others constructively in upbuilding rather than turning around and blame keep going around. Again and again, if any of the planning that results in which many others are involved, if that planning is such that is one for all and all for one, then most likely challenges like this will be minimized. So it's not that a scenario will now come up in which we are looking for the culprit, but together many are able to face the challenges, whatever might have precipitated it. It is not that you have one single condition. What has always happened, one side holds back, another side is not looking at the whole thing. So it may be that everyone is guilty in one way or the other, or no one is guilty. In that case, where does it lead? So it is best to have that principle of cooperation and working harmoniously, and not waiting for challenges to present themselves before you find solutions. For in the case of getting everyone involved, some of the challenges will not even precipitate because another route would have been found.
Thank you for this answer, Gregory. It just shows that we always have to look at the bigger picture and, rather get stuck into sort of fights and looking, just getting stuck in that and then obviously with no solution there. Now, Gregory, I know we have only a few minutes to go to the end of the show, but another point question I'd like to put up there is, people seem to fear change. And it can be anything to do with health or even new medication, whatever is there, a new way of doing something. They seem to fear that. Is that something to do with they're used to like being in their comfort zone, or why is this attitude there of fear of change? Is because it's not that you're brought up to fear these things, but somehow there's some something with it happens that so why is that fear there of change?
Very simply, because they are unsure of what is to come based on their current attitudes of laxity, of laziness. If they are sure that the changes will hit them like the lottery and having millions of pounds in their pockets without having done anything, they will surely embrace it. But because in their quiet reflections, they themselves know they are not as good as they should be, and that precipitates a reciprocal activity of fear because in their sensing, it may be that the changes will hit them very hard, and therefore they don't wish it. So, for many who fear changes, it means they themselves do not wish to grow, or do they wish to remain in the same spots as children? They don't want to grow up to experience the challenges.
Thank you so much for that answer, Gregory. We've come to the end of the show, listeners, and I just want to end with the text from the Grail Message. There is a foreword of the Grail Message, which is titled, "For Your Guidance." The bandage falls, and belief becomes conviction. Liberation and redemption lie only in conviction. I am addressing earnest seekers only. They must be able and willing to examine this matter objectively. Religious fanatics and irresponsible enthusiasts may hold aloof, for they are detrimental to the truth. As for the malevolent and prejudiced, they shall find their sentence in the very words. The message will strike only those who still carry within them a spark of truth and the yearning to be true human beings. To all such it will become the shining light and staff. It will lead them unswervingly out of all the chaos of the present day confusion. The following word does not bring a new religion, but is intended as the torch to help all serious listeners or readers find the right path, which leads them to the longed for height. Only he who bestirs himself can advance spiritually. The fool who uses extraneous aids for this, in the form of ready-made opinions of others, only walks his path as if on crutches, while ignoring his own healthy limbs. But the moment he boldly uses all the abilities which lie dormant within him, awaiting his call to help in his ascent, he is employing the talent entrusted to him in accordance with his Creator's will, and will easily overcome all the obstacles that seek to divert him. Therefore, awake. Genuine faith lies only in conviction, and conviction comes solely through an inflexible weighing and examining. See that you're truly alive in the wonderful creation of your God. Abrushin. Dear listeners, that was the foreword of the Grail Message in the Light of Truth by Abrushin. And if you are interested in getting more information on the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. Gregory, is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners to end the show tonight?
Wishing everyone a beautiful week.
Thank you. And from me, Saad here, listeners, I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight. Hope you enjoyed our discussion. And again, just encouragement for you to pick up the Grail Message and examine for yourselves to see what knowledge there is for our awakening. And we'll be back as usual next Tuesday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time with another topic, and hopefully you can join us then. All the best. Take care, everybody. God bless. Good night.